All right, we will call this first ever virtual meeting for the City Council for the City of North College Hill to order. We'll start with our prayer and then we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this Council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can. With your help and guidance, we pray this in your name. Amen. Jim, nod your head if you can see it. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Ms. Dewald, can you call the roll, please? You should be unmuted.
Miss Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Hedger,
Here.
Miss Underwood,
Here.
Mr. Miller Novak, Mr. Miller Novak,
Here.
Miss Hartman, Miss Zorb,
Here.
Mr. O'Shea.
Here.
Beth, can you hear me? Beth,
Yes.
okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, thank you. So you have before you tonight's agenda.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we adopt tonight's agenda.
Mr. President, I'll second.
We have a motion from Ms. Bailey, a second from Mr. Hedger. Discussion? Ms. Dewald, please call the roll.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you. All right, you also have meeting minutes from our regular meeting on 3/16, special meeting on 3/18, and a work session meeting on 3/30.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea?
I noticed in the pertaining strictly to the March 16 meeting under the agenda, the word guess is used, and I believe that should have been guessed. And there were some additional spelling issues under legislation, which I really, doesn't matter to me if they're changed. I don't think it changes the context of the minutes.
Any other discussion?
Can you repeat that, Mr. O'Shea?
Under the agenda, the March 16 minutes.
16. Okay,
Mr. President, there's no further discussion.
no, I still didn't catch,
Hang on, Mr. Hedger.
okay, so the addition that you're looking at, Mr. O'Shea, was it from your mailbox or from an email?
It's probably from the email.
Okay, because I did correct that on the version that I have. So now I don't know how we're going to record this. Mr. Dieters? The actual hard copy that I have is correct.
Mr. President, the last time Ms. Dewald emailed us minutes, they're correct in there as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I think you should be fine moving forward. Just noted that Mr. O'Shea said that, and as long as the version that you have is correct, you should be fine.
Okay, and then what about the unidentified misspellings in legislation, because I don't see it.
Again, Mr. President. Again, if I don't think the spelling errors changed the context of the minutes. It was just an observation.
I would say we move forward then.
Okay,
Mr. Hedger,
There's no further discussion. I make a motion to adopt the meeting minutes for 3/16, special meeting minutes for 3/18, and special meeting minutes for 3/30.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea?
I would normally wait for a second before I ask for discussion.
Yes, sir.
However, the March 20th meeting was not officially an open meeting. It was simply a work session. There was no roll call or anything like that. There was no a reason to adjourn a meeting. So I'm not comfortable with having minutes to a meeting that didn't really take place as an open meeting.
Why wouldn't we have minutes for it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller Novak, say that again.
Well, I mean, I guess I don't follow that mentality. I mean, like we had a meeting, we're just taking minutes of it. I mean, seems like it makes more sense. Better safe than sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion for Mr. Hedger to adopt the 3 sets of minutes.
Mr. President,
Ms. Bailey?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Hedger to adopt the meeting minutes from 3/16, 3/18, and 3/30 with a second by Ms. Bailey. Discussion? Ms. Dewald, please call the roll.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea,
No.
All right, next on the agenda is communications, Ms. Dewald.
Okay, so motion passes 6-1. Sorry, I was
I'm
writing
sorry.
notes.
Yep, that's all right. Thank you.
Mhm. I'm finished. Go ahead.
Communications, Ms. Dewald, you're up.
So communications are a little backlogged because I wasn't present at the last meeting. On March, looks like the 13th, the city received a letter from the Department of Commerce for liquor control. And it's basically just a form letter telling us what the Ohio Revised Code is. On March 9th, we received an application for a liquor license for the address of 1579 Goodman Avenue. And then we also received from the Institute of Municipal Clerks. That's a continuing education or professional development for municipal clerks. There's also a yearly fee to this. So in my opinion, not that anybody asked, it costs money. So I'd rather not get involved with that if we don't have to. And then on, I believe sometime last week, we received a pamphlet. It's the 2020 budget in brief from Hamilton County.
And everyone received a copy of this?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dewald. Next, we have committee reports, starting with budget and finance.
Hi, sorry. We have not met since our last meeting. Our next meeting will be next Monday at 6:30 p.m. 7:30 p.m. My bad, Christian.
Okay, thank you. Next committee report, city and community development and recreation.
We have not met since our last meeting. Our next meeting will be Monday at 6:30.
Thank you. Next is public safety.
Our last meeting was canceled because of the coronavirus issues and with regard to having live meetings. And our next meeting will be on April 20th
What time?
at 7:30.
Thank you. Next is rules and public policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have not met, or our previous meeting was canceled due to the coronavirus issues and concerns. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 27th at 6:30 p.m. But there may be some concerns about the method for the meeting. But right now it's still scheduled for April 27th at 6:30 p.m.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. President,
Yes, ma'am.
I misspoke. My meeting is on April 27th as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Ad hoc reports.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
on behalf of the North College Hill Chamber of Commerce, the Chamber Executive Board met on March the 26th via teleconferencing. We discussed some potential changes to the dues. We also discussed the benefits that are available from the Southern Ohio Chamber Alliance, which we're now a part of. There was some discussion about potentially finding a new location for the yard sale. Then we also, I want to mention on March 30th, Mr. Mosby had circulated a photo of some signage from Springfield Township about all the open businesses. And the North College Hill Chamber liked the idea. We purchased some banners, and then last Saturday, we installed them in support of those local businesses. Our next meeting is tentatively scheduled. We have a general meeting for all the general membership meeting is tentatively scheduled for May the 14th. We have not discussed if that'll take place or what that really means at this time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. And I will say the banners look excellent, and I appreciate the work from those that went out and, yeah, you had a shovel, right, Jim? All right. Any other ad hoc reports?
Mr. President.
Mr. Miller Novak.
Yeah, simply stated, I'm the school board guy, and school's closed. So there's that. But my understanding is, for people that might not be aware, that schools for this week, there's no appointments due, and our mayor probably knows better than I do, so I'll defer to her. But originally the idea is that there would be school information that would come out today, but they're kind of putting a pin in it until next week. So if you have a student, it's going to be a week before the last amount of assignments were due, and you will get new assignments. But my understanding is if you're a family, and I think this is the most important thing to understand, if you're a family that needs food and food disbursement for breakfast or lunches for your child, I'm pretty sure those are still ongoing. And I'm just gonna like pass the buck to Tracy a little bit right here, because it's been a little bit unclear, but I think that we should do our best to let the public know what services are provided through our school right now. Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Miller Novak. Any other reports? All right, then we'll move on to the administrative reports. We'll start off with Madam Mayor Tracy Nichols. You're on mute.
Thank you,
Should be good
Mr.
now.
President. Okay, thank you. I was waiting for you to unmute me, but I didn't realize.
I
had to unmute.
apologize. It took me a second.
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll pick up where Mr. Miller Novak left off. As far as the food, Lay Soup has been wonderful. I contacted them right before we were sent home, and they have brought out a tremendous amount of food to the school produce, and they do frozen meals. We've actually had them, they actually called me again last week to donate additional food items. So apparently it's going really well. I was there at the school today, and they were still passing out meals. I know we have reached out to Ms. Underwood to see if maybe we could do some of these things through the senior center, to see if some of our senior citizens, if they in fact needed meals. I know Lay Soup is willing and able to donate soups, frozen meals, produce. The thing with the produce is that it does go bad. So they are willing to help. The school actually reached out to me as well, Dottie Petrie, who was over the food service, because they wanted to do different locations throughout the city. And she asked if they could possibly 1 or 2 days a week come outside to the parking lot of the city center and have kids meet them there if they live closer to this location, instead of having to walk all the way down to the high school or middle school or elementary. And so I do know that she was out there Friday. I think it's been Fridays that she's been there, maybe from like 12 to 1. I do know that they also extended their hours. They were doing 11 to 1. If I'm not mistaken, some days they're there until 2. So if you know kids who still need meals, just have them stop by. Mr. Miller Novak talked about the schoolwork. I do believe that it's still a work in progress. You know, we still want to stay that 6 foot. So I went into the gym today and just sort of observed how it's set up. I do not know what their plan is as far as to how they'll have the kids come in. I know they're sending home Chromebooks for the kids to do their work. Above all, and anything else they need to maintain the safety and stay within the guidelines that the governor has sent down for us. And with that, I just want to thank the community, because I've been driving around and I don't see as much traffic out on the streets. I've probably seen kids myself personally once in a group, and it was maybe 5 or 6 of them, but that was only one time. I think we're doing a good job to try to maintain our health and wellness of the entire community. And I appreciate that, not just from our citizens, but as well as I'm really proud to say that Mr. O'Shea talked about the Chamber of Commerce. That is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I know we saw that over in Springfield Township. Me and Mr. Graver talked about it. I talked to Mr. Mosby, and he contacted, but I'm really grateful that it got out as soon as it did, because we want to keep our business afloat. And I appreciate, at first I'm thinking, why did we go out? The concern for me is the safety of our community and our workers there. But I just commend the Chamber of Commerce for getting it done so quickly, and I really appreciate it, because, we do have people that travel through, people that still don't live in our neighborhood to come here. And we want to be able to, I can say for myself, and one time my refrigerator went out, I needed to use restaurants to eat until we got it taken care of. And I couldn't imagine if that was the case now. So I just want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for that, and our citizens are doing a great job. I also want to thank our fire and police department, because every day they're out there, they're grinding, they're getting it done. I know it's not easy. And not just myself, I'm sure we all appreciate the hard work that they're doing. It can't be easy to be. I couldn't imagine for myself to have that career and then have to go home to my family. So I would ask that everyone will continue to keep them lifted up. I appreciate you, Chief Schran and Chief Fells. I know it's not easy. We've had a couple conversations, and you're doing a great job, and I appreciate all the hard work, even from Public Works. I know it's not easy for them as well, because they have to, I'm sure they pitch in down at the fire house with cleaning. So with that being said, I see Ms. Ari Hall is on here. She's our new finance manager, and we'd like to welcome her. She came in grinding. She got her budget turned in. I know you guys got the email from that. So we're all good with the budget for right now. We don't take that lightly either, because we know with the state of everything, there could be some economic effects that take place with us, and we'll have to deal with those as well. And on a good note, I saw that the tulips that were planted by Serve NCH, oh my gosh, I was so excited. I wanted to pull over and take a picture, but there's really nowhere for me to pull over except if I pull in somebody's driveway. But I appreciate that as well, because it's a nice, I'm visual. So when everything is looking gloomy and, we're used to a lot of traffic on the streets, and I see that, it made my day. So that, I believe that was Saturday. I just pray we don't get any cold weather, but it really looks nice. So thank you all. That's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, next on the agenda is the city administrator's report. Mr. Mosby, I will unmute you now. Maybe, there you go.
Well, good evening, everyone. I won't take up too much time. I think the first thing I would like to do is to, as the mayor did, recognize that we do have Chief Schran from the police department, Chief Fells from the fire department. We have Mr. Dieters, our law director, and our new finance manager, Ari Hall, who comes to us from the city of Hamilton, where she was formerly a budget analyst. And so I'm really looking forward to working with her. I know she's jumping right into the fire of sorts. Of course, none of us could really see this coming, but at the same time, sometimes that's the best way to learn, by getting your feet wet. I would also like to thank Rick Cropper, who has helped us throughout the past 6 months. Even though he was a temporary employee, I believe that he really did a phenomenal job. And I do want to publicly thank him for the work that he put in for our city. I will not, as the mayor said, I won't speak too much on some of the details. All I will tell everyone right now is this: I have been in contact regularly with the county. So we are looking at what we're looking at, obviously, at next steps for us. I will say that our departments have been very proactive in making sure that they're keeping track of all of their COVID-19 related expenses, and they are submitting those to Ms. Hall. And so at the proper time, we will submit an application to the government. We have already submitted our registration, so we are already in the system at this particular time. And so the decision will have to be made. Of course, should we, try to submit an application now with projected expenses, or, should we wait? So we will continue to monitor that to see how we're doing. And obviously, I'll be working very closely with the mayor to make sure that we do the best, make the best decision, regarding the state of our own local finances. I would like to say I definitely appreciated being outside with Mr. O'Shea, Mr. Blaylock, and Pat Boss on Saturday, but I would certainly not take any credit for that. As the mayor said, she actually submitted that. I had seen it in Springfield Township, but she did submit that. And of course, I did turn to the chamber, but it was just great to be able to work with the school, the chamber. I think it's wonderful that people can see a united effort to support our businesses. And so I was very glad to be a part of that. Mr. Graver, for right now, I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mosby. Next, we have a report from Law Director, Mr. Dieters.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
So obviously, you're aware the House Bill 197 was passed by the legislature, which gives us the right to have this meeting via technology as opposed to an open meeting. And I believe that the decision that you all made to sort of do a run through was a good decision. I've seen a lot of my clients thoroughly epically fail at this the first time they do it in front of everyone. So I commend you for doing that. The only thing that I would like to report related to that is there's been some discussion as to what would happen if, when you're having a virtual meeting, you would need to go into executive session. And so it becomes a little bit tricky. What we have advised people to do would be that you would have a second platform. So let's just say, for instance, you had to go into executive session, you were going into an executive session for a reason which was applicable under the statute. We'd have a council person make that motion like we always would do. It would be second, you'd vote on it. And then you'd have to go to a second platform. The one that I'm advising people to go to is just go to a conference call. Conference calls are almost impossible to hack into, not impossible, but very difficult to hack into a call. It's easier for people to hack into, whether it be Zoom or Google Hangout or whatever other video format you have. You would then proceed with your executive session on a telephone conference line at such time that you believe you've conducted and concluded your business in executive session. It would just be very simple. Someone would declare yourself out of executive session like you always do. You'd go back to this platform and either continue with your meeting, or many times no actions taken after that, and you would just adjourn. So if you get into a situation where you do have an executive session opportunity that you need to engage in, I think you can still do it. You just have to remember that you need to put it into that second platform, because there's no other way to kind of turn the public off from this platform that I'm aware of. I could be wrong. If there's an easier way and ICRC has a better solution to that, certainly I'd be willing to look at that and listen to that. But that's sort of what we've been doing so far. Otherwise, if there are any general questions about anything related to House Bill 197, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them with just the understanding is that, as most people know, this is a very fluid situation. So as soon as I think I know what's happening with this whole situation, 5 minutes later, it changes. And so whatever I tell you could change tomorrow or by the time you go to bed this evening, but I'll be happy to answer any questions I can. There's no questions on Mr. President. I would indicate that I'm concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dieters.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
a question for Mr. Dieters or Mr. Mosby. Mr. Dieters, you probably don't know for sure anyway. Ron, do we have conference call capabilities?
Jim, I can answer that question. I have a conference line that I've let the city use occasionally. So yes, we do. So if we need to do that, Ron can get that information out to everybody, and you guys are free to use our firm's conference line. Yeah,
Thank you.
We pay a flat fee monthly for it, so there's no additional charge. You're more than free to use it.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby.
Yeah, I would like to add to that, and I do want everybody to know this. Mr. Dieters and his firm have been very gracious. They've allowed us to use a lot of their resources, and we do for certain meetings, as well as, like he said, their conference calls. So I do want to express publicly again appreciation for the help that he's provided in assuring that we can have many of these meetings.
Thank you, Mr. Mosby. All right, next on the agenda is call of members. We'll start with Ms. Bailey.
I don't really have anything, just stay safe and practice social distancing, I guess. Other than that, I don't have anything. But the tulips do look great.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Hedger.
Are we there? Hi.
Yes, sir.
Now, like I said, Amber, I don't have much either. Stay home and stay healthy. I did want to thank all of our police, fire, and EMS, and all the essential workers out there. Keep working and doing a great job because everyone really needs you. And then I just want to welcome Miss Hall, and that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Hedger. Ms. Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a lot. I noticed that there was a company driving around cutting down trees or trimming trees on Clover Nook, and then they were on my street this morning. Does anybody know what that company is or what they're doing or what that's about? Also,
Mr.
I'd like to
President.
just say, I'm sorry.
I was asking Mr. President if I may speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Mosby.
Yes, Ms. Underwood, while I'm not 100% certain, I do believe what you may have been seeing is a company that's been contracted by Duke Energy. Usually around this time, what they do is they are trimming back the branches that may have overgrown that might, interfere with their wires. So I suspect that that's probably what it was. We have not contracted anyone except for there was a tree that we had to cut down on Shamrock, but that was the last tree contractor, that we contracted with.
Thank you, Mr. Mosby. I'd also like to say welcome to Ms. Hall, and I'd also like to thank, the fire department and the police department, and as well as the individuals who work at Kroger's and the other restaurants for, their everything they're doing, just kind of going out during this time.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. Mr. Miller Novak.
Yeah, I just, sorry, my dog's running around. I just want to let everybody know that I've been taking a lot of bike rides around the community at a very safe distance, and we have really good people in our city who've been waving to me, and I think just happy to see me, not because of my looks, just because it's nice to see other people right now from a distance. And I'm pretty confident that we have really great people in our city that are willing enough to wave at me instead of the pitchforks and torches I usually get. So I've been appreciative of that. And I'm really grateful for our first responders and our business owners and the people who are working at Kroger and everything else, man. And I think this is a time where it's hard. And I know that it's hard. And when you see people do brave things for very little, it's very appreciative. And like I said earlier, if you need help and your kids need to get food, you should talk to the school. And I'm just glad and I live in a great community. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Miller Novak. Ms. Zorb.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think the only thing I'd really like to say is can somebody take a picture of the tulips and send it to me? Because I'm not allowed out. And then I would also like to say to the people, please listen to the stay-at-home order to make it easier for Chief Schran and Chief Fells and all the nurses and all of the healthcare workers. Make it easier on them. And please understand the spread that you are potentially encouraging when you don't stay at home. It's not always about you. Sometimes it's about who you touch. So please just stay at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zorb. Ms. Hartman.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, just thank you to all the first responders and Kroger people. They have been very friendly and they're keeping it pretty daggone clean there. And everyone stayed well and healthy, and you know, it's a tough time. I've noticed our city though, everyone that I've not met yet, people seem a lot nicer than you think they are being out and about right now when they walk their dogs or whatnot. Kind of cool to see that. That's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Hartman. Mr. O'Shea.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just welcome to Ms. Hall, and I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Next on the agenda is legislation. Ms. Dewald.
We have a third reading on Resolution 03-2020, a resolution to authorize the city administrator to review the potential for a Parks and Recreation Director.
Mr. President, if there's no discussion, I would like to make a motion to adopt resolution 3-20.
I have a motion for Mr. Hedger to adopt resolution 03-2020.
Mr. President,
Ms. Bailey,
I will second that.
Of course.
discussion.
Go.
We have a motion from Mr. Hedger and a second from Ms. Bailey to adopt resolution 03-2020. Call the roll, please, Ms. Dewald.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. We have, I just lost my sheet of paper. My dog's tangled up in my feet, of course. We have a second reading on Resolution 5-2020, a resolution to authorize the city administrator to execute a collective bargaining agreement between the city of North College Hill and the Fraternal Order of Police, Ohio Labor Council.
Thank you, Ms. Dewald. All right, next item on the agenda is old business.
Excuse me, Mr. President.
Mr. Mosby.
I deeply apologize. I'm hoping that our members of council would be willing to, at this particular point, if there is no discussion, to suspend the readings and to vote on final passage for that particular, for the last resolution that Mr. Wall just read into the minutes.
Resolution 05-2020.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mosby.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Miller Novak.
okay. Wow, that was a long delay.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. I don't know that it's the intranet or just it is what it is. I mean, to give Mr. Mosby a shot at what he wants, I mean, I would be willing to move that we suspend the reading, second and third reading for that ordinance. Is it, can you please hand me the number? I don't have it really. available.
Resolution 05-2020.
Exactly. 05-2020. I would move that we suspend it to give it a fair shot.
Mr. President,
Ms. Bailey.
I'll second that.
All right, so I have a motion for Mr. Miller Novak to suspend third reading of resolution 05-2020 with a second from Ms.
President?
Bailey. Yes,
I would also like to add, though, that we did read this as an ordinance, so it's not anything new.
thank you. All right, motion and second on the floor, discussion. Call the roll, please. Start over, Ms. Dewald.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea,
I move that we adopt Resolution 5-2020.
Mr. President, I will second that.
all right, I have a motion for Mr. O'Shea to adopt resolution 05-2020 with a second from Ms. Bailey. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby.
yeah, I'd just like to thank members of council for putting that forth and passing that resolution for the collective bargaining agreement.
All right, thank you, sir. Moving on to old business now.
Mr. President,
I muted myself again. I apologize. Mr. Miller Novak.
hey man, as old business, I think we're all a going concern. So I would just like to shout out, and I hope that all of our council members are extremely careful, and thank you for coming to the meeting today and doing what we need to do. And I just want you guys to know that I care about you very much. And I hope you take care of yourselves and your family. And that's old business and new business. I care very much for you guys. I love you all, and take good care of yourself.
I will make the motion to agree with you. Thank you, sir. Any other old business?
Mr. President,
Ms. Bailey?
do we still have the fire chief and the police chief?
We do.
Are there any updates they would like to give us? I mean, it's not often that they're here, so, well, they're here, but you know what I'm saying.
I will start with Chief Fells.
Yeah, thank you. Not really. You guys have been following the news just like we all have. I appreciate all the well wishes. I'm sure my guys do, and I'll pass that along to them. But yeah, if you don't know, our zip code 45231 and the one that covers Northgate are the kind of the epicenter of this thing in Hamilton County. So keep that in mind when you're out and about, which hopefully you're not. But yeah, other than that, things are picking up a little bit slower than we thought. But you know, we are prepared. We have enough PPE, and we're running with 6 still, at least until the end of April. So if I need it any longer, I'll be sure to let you know. But thanks again.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the report. And you guys, yeah, you need to take care of yourselves and stay safe. Chief Schrand.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, I wanted to start by saying thank you to everybody for the well wishes. I also wanted to tell everybody about how great the relationship is between myself and Mr. Mosby, Tracy Nichols, the mayor, and Brian Fells, the fire chief. It's times like these when things are a little chaotic that, you know, the heroes rise to the top. So I can tell you that we were excited. Chief Fells made a system for us to be able to disinfect and clean our cruisers and clean the station. That made things a lot easier. We're sharing hand sanitizer back and forth. We're making phone calls all day long to make sure that all of our folks, both from police, fire, public works, and the rest of the city, are appropriately stocked and well taken care of through this whole ordeal, so we continue to serve the public. I can tell you that our numbers are slow in comparison to what it has been, but I think that's only because we're not going on a lot of the lower priority runs, such as overtime parking and things like that right now with the BMVs shut down. And traffic ticket numbers obviously have fallen off, as our main priorities are to handle the domestic violence and domestic troubles that are definitely increasing, the missing kids, and taking care of the businesses to make sure that they don't prey victim in the middle of the night to other folks who are out breaking in and looking for food and different things like that. So I know we've been, even though our numbers as far as what the officers have been doing is down, I know that the runs are obviously more of a priority and are a little bit more dangerous for the things that they're dealing with. And I think that kind of goes for the fire department as well. Their numbers might be down for right now, but every call that they go on is obviously heightened and a lot more dangerous. So I can tell you that our folks are doing a good job handling all that stress and all those things, and we'll continue to work together for the best possible outcome. And hopefully we'll get through this in sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Chief Schrand. I'll say the same thing to you. You stay safe, take care of your guys.
Mr.
We
President,
appreciate everything you're doing. Ms. Bailey.
Chief Strand, if you ever have anybody looking for food, send them to my house. I still have the little free pantry. So if somebody's breaking in for food, man, send them over here. Like, I'll feed them the best I can.
Yeah, and you know, the school's done a great job. I know they're open every day from 11 to 1 for people to come get food. I've talked to the volunteers and the folks over at the school every single day. There's avenues out there for lots of people to get food. I think it's one of those, unfortunately, crime doesn't take a rest. So sometimes that's just in the DNA, and they still want to commit crimes to do their things. But like I said, I have a responsibility to not only take care of the residents, but also the businesses and the business owners. And now's a trying time for them as well. There's a lot of uncertainty, and with that brings a lot of different fear when nobody knows what's going to happen or what's going on. So I'm trying to alleviate that the best way we can through the police department to make sure that everybody knows, whether you're at your business or not at your business, we're taking care of it, we're watching it. And whenever it is that we all come back to normal, your stuff will have been in good hands.
Hey, Chief Strand.
Yes.
Or Mr. President, sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Miller Novak.
Thank you so much. I know, right? This is interesting. So, hey, my wife's wallet was stolen out of her car the other day, and the idiot that stole the wallet out of her car tried to make a purchase and transfer money to himself, and it had his name and his phone number. And to make a long story short, I'm not going to release his name right this second, but we found out who he was and where he lived, and we called the police, and Officer Cole answered the phone. And I didn't even know that Officer Cole was the stepson of Marty Cole. And I feel bad for Officer Cole for being the stepson of Marty Cole, because we all know Marty. But nonetheless, man, he did a great job. He took the information down, and I guess this guy will be charged or whatever. It is what it is. I mean, it just happened, but the police are answering the phones right now. But to make a long story short, you're right. Criminals don't take a break, right? If anything, when people are more vulnerable, the criminals like lay it on more and more, right? Because they prey on their vulnerabilities, and that's just what criminals do. They prey on vulnerabilities. But nonetheless, we were a victim of a crime within the last 3 days. North College Hill PD answered the phone when we called them. We called the 7171 number. They took good care of me, and it was funny. I mean, they're just really good people. You have a very good staff. You have very good officers. They're very respectful. They're very kind, and good for you for doing a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
I just want to get some clarification on our organization's decision to continue the use of Zoom for future meetings, including the committee meetings.
Mr. President,
Ms. Bailey.
is that new business?
We've been talking about it for a while, so it's kind of old.
So, Mr. President, I'm not like a tech person, but Zoom seems to me to be like the one that everybody is getting into. Nobody got into this one. I would like to look at Google Hangouts just because we already have a G Suite, and I think that it would be easier for us, not easier, but more secure for us to use, but that's my own personal opinion.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I can only speak for what I have gleaned from ICRC, and ICRC has, and I'm not trying to point us in a direction, but I'm going to tell you that the conversation that I had with ICRC, that they are staying with the platform of Zoom. So if we go to another platform, then it will be on us to make sure that we host it, we handle it, we record it, or whatever else, host it, whatever else needs to be done, it will be on us to make sure that that happens. So I don't know who among us would take on that initiative, but if we deviate from Zoom, we're on our own, is what I'm understanding.
Mr. President.
Mr. Miller-Novak.
Well, I think, from my point of view, like whatever device you're using, you should probably be feeling is secure for one reason or another. I mean, everything I'm seeing, Google Hangouts is safer. But having said that, I'll go along with the fold. I just think that everybody should be using a device which is the most private device you have, number one, and number two, it is what it is. I mean, we could use the phone, technically speaking, and satisfy the law. We could just use the phone and record our conversations and then post them, but we have very limited means, so I understand the attraction to using ICRC. and that's great. I would just ask that our members, if we're going to use Zoom, that you use a device that you are confident is the most private device you have with the less information that is vulnerable on it. And I mean, I'll go along with the full.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
actually, I was waiting till we got to new business also because I thought it was new business. But I would like to move that we take ICRC's advice and establish the waiting room for our next meeting.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea?
I'll second that motion.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
I just, point of discussion, I just want an explanation of what the quote unquote waiting room is. So I know what I'm voting for.
Ms. Zorb, you want to take that on?
I will stumble through it because I'm not an expert either. But it is my understanding that when someone wants to join the meeting, they sit in what's called a virtual waiting room. And yes, I used air quotes. So did you see that? Look like bunny rabbit ears because I'm holding my space bar. But when someone tries to join the meeting, they go into a virtual waiting room and ICRC has to approve them to get into the meeting before they can actually provide video input and stuff like that. So it's basically like another security step before they can get in.
Mr. Miller Novak?
So just to clarify, your motion is that when we're having meetings that we're going to require this extra step.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. I'm on board, so let's do it.
Yeah, so basically, even if they have the link to this meeting, they can't get in unless they're allowed in by one of the hosts.
I mean, it just makes, I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Mr. Miller Novak?
Common sense, I mean, is, as much as we hate being bureaucratic, as many steps as we can take to get involved in our meetings as possible, I'm very much in favor of, so let's do it.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'd like to add one more point to everyone that can hear me. The individuals within the city will get a private link in order to be an active participant. The public gets what's called a public link that they can listen, so that qualifies for the open meeting portion of it, but they're not active participants like we are.
Thank
Mr.
you, Ms.
President.
Zorb. Mr. O'Shea?
Ms. Zorb, just to be clear, are we still streaming onto Facebook, which obviously they don't have access to interrupt or anything, but that's still available, correct? I mean, that's still the process?
I thought we agreed not to do Facebook. We agreed.
YouTube, I'm sorry, YouTube.
Yes. So yes, on YouTube, yes. Would anyone care if Jason from ICRC unmuted himself to answer any questions before we vote?
Mr. President.
Mr. Miller Novak?
Yeah, I mean, first things first, I'd like to thank Ms. Zorb for doing a lot of the frontline work for the privacy of our meeting. I appreciate it very much. I know she's been doing a lot of homework, and I secondly would be very happy unmuting Jason, our tech guy, to tell us what we should do.
Jason, are you there?
Yes, I'm right here. So in reference to the waiting room is an additional step. Just, I think Mary Jo explained it well. Essentially that creates just like a waiting room in a doctor's office where someone would have to approve people to come in. Some other small additional things that we've done to kind of enhance the safety in response to some concerns and just procedurally anyway, include like before we started the meeting, we locked the meeting. So now even if someone wanted to come in through the waiting room, it basically tell them the meeting is locked. So even if one of you sent out the code to someone who is trying to get in, they wouldn't be able to. We also have chat turned off for 2 reasons, open meetings reasons, and that way nobody can try and send any nefarious files or anything like that. And then kind of the same thing with screen share. A large part of Zoom bombing, as it's called, is coming in on a screen share and sharing something that shouldn't be shared in a public setting like that. And so when you guys have kind of experienced that, we have that set to hosts only for that reason. The big only other previous security thing that keeps coming up that I've seen about Zoom is actually not an internet issue. It is something where someone have to like physically have your computer in their hands to hack it. I'm using an air quotes in that way. So that's not a big security threat in our current setting. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Jason. All right, I have a motion on the floor to establish the waiting room on Zoom per ICRC's recommendation from Ms. Zorb with a second by Mr. O'Shea. Ms. Dewald, call the roll.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes. Sorry.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Ms. Dewald. Any other new business?
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I don't know if everyone is doing this on a PC or on their mobile device, but I can tell you that when I first logged in tonight, I logged back out and Zoom did provide a security update tonight already. I know they're aggressively working on security issues. So they did provide one already today.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby?
yes, before the meeting concludes, I would like to ask if we may give a little time to our new finance manager, Ms. Ari Hall, so that she can introduce herself to council.
Sounds good to me. Ms. Hall?
Okay, can everyone hear me? I don't know if I have this.
Yes, ma'am, you're good.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for welcoming me to the city, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you and meeting all of you soon. Maybe not at close proximity, but in some way, shape, or form. So
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome.
thank you.
Any other new business?
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
man, if there's no further new business, I would move to adjourn this meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to adjourn by Mr. Miller Novak with a second from Ms. Zorb. Ms. Dewald, please call the roll.
Miss Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Thank you, everybody, and yes.
Miss Zorb,
Yes.
Miss Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn passes 7-0.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I actually think we did a pretty good job, and I agree having a little practice run the other night definitely helped. So thank you all for your participation. Have a great evening. Stay safe.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Love you guys.
Night.